next time you say there's nothing to watch, watch a movie with the nothing. Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome to this week's episode of the Hollow Weekly Horror Podcast. Nick and George here with The Night House. Doing a little back catalog cleanup. A couple movies that went by us. This one had great reviews. 2021. It's one of those movies that during the pandemic, you can't place a year it came out.
It's like 2020 to 24.
We could figure out what year Killer Clowns came out before we actually nailed this one down.
I regretted missing this just because of the poster. I loved the imagery when they were marketing it, but then I forgot it existed. So
it kind of had the same colors and I don't know, kind of like grooviness of like Last Night in Soho. Like they kind of have this like, you know, dream-esque kind of quality. But if you're like us and you haven't seen it, The Night House 2020, 2021, whatever you want to call it, on Shudder, directed by David Bruckner. Starring.
Was it on Shudder? I thought we watched it at HBO Max.
Let me look that up. I thought it was. Let's see here. The Night House.
But I don't know who made it. I think it's Searchlight, but I don't know what that means.
Formerly Fox Searchlight. So it was HBO Max.
Okay.
Man, HBO Max is pulling through. That's where we watched Killer Clowns. That's where we watched.
HBO Max it's definitely the best streaming app right now.
I think so. But the movie starring Rebecca Hall, who I kept thinking Rebecca Ferguson. I don't know why. Just kept throwing those two back and forth. Sarah Goldberg, Evan. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. The guy who played Owen. You have a crazy last name. I don't want to butcher it, but his Evan, and then Vondi Curtis Hall. It was a great cast.
Great small cast. Remember me like Sweetheart.
Yes.
Right. Just a very sizable, like very manageable size cast.
Yes, and I just got it. The first thing I just got to say about this movie that I think is just the most impressive thing as I pull up my notes here. $50,000 budget.
I still
believe it.
I'm only 99% sure that's right. Still, even though you read me the quote from the director.
Hey, just because I read from the director, I mean, I believe it either. It
looks so good for a small budget.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a lower budget horror movie, but it felt like a $5 to $10 million budget. To me,
I mean,
that's what it felt like.
I mean, I wouldn't have been shocked if you'd been like, you believe this movie was like only 1.5 million or whatever, but $50,000. It was mind-boggling for the entertainment value here.
No, because we were just talking about low budgets, and like Joe Bob just showed, Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. Last Friday we were talking about Blair Witch and God, what was some of the other movies that came out with the low budget? Not Host. It was another online.
I don't remember what budget the Host had, but I'm surprised that was huge.
Yeah, that was a pretty big one. But this movie,
yes,
The Night House. I keep wanting to call it Night Mother.
Night House. I fell in love with this movie overnight. Has that ever happened to you? You ever watched a movie and just like straight fall in love with it? Thinking about it?
No.
Because that happened to me. It happened to me slower with Personal Shopper. It happened to me like instantly with this movie for some reason.
Did you not like it at first? Like what made
it? Wasn't I not like? It wasn't that I wasn't liking it at first. I actually was super enjoying it while I was watching it. It's just there are plot shenanigans that I think possibly take a lot of people out of this movie. I haven't read a lot of reviews of it, but I could see watching it and having a problem with a lot of the plot shenanigans. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I sat with it that I realized that the plot shenanigans are actually not even a weakness of it. It's part of the greatness of what's happening here. This movie does things that horror fans always complain about in other horror movies so well, but it's quiet about it and it's not putting attention to it. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it will get the credit it deserves for some of the stuff. I mean, just as one example, the idea of like telling your friends that some of the supernatural weirdness is happening to you and your friends not believing you.
Yeah.
This movie implodes that idea. The friends lock it. The one friend locks in right away. Even if she doesn't believe it, she's super supportive. And this is going to be a huge spoiler review. At the end, she's the person who saves the day. When have you ever seen a horror movie where like the friend that you were underestimating the whole time actually comes in and does like the saving move at the end. Like Get Out was the last time.
Yeah, that's the one that always comes.
I can remember it, but it almost never happens, right? So like this movie had a way of taking horror cliches. The biggest one by far here is the stupid decisions characters make in horror movies. This movie is the greatest, most exquisite handling of that I can imagine. I don't think you could do it better than what this movie did. It's just really quiet, so you're not noticing that it's happening.
Right. Let me give a quick synopsis for those who
of the movie.
For those who are completely blind, because I went in expecting a completely different movie.
Did you?
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, it was called The Night House, so I assumed some kind of architecture, kind of weird stuff going there.
Well, I mean, it is sort of.
Yeah, but it's one of those like slow. It's not really slow burn. But it's not.
It's pretty slow.
You think you would consider it slow?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's not a lot of kills that you see. There are kills,
Correct.
but you're not seeing a lot of them, right? Here, let's just do it like this. Slower, faster, same speed as Hereditary.
Slower.
Slower than Hereditary. Okay, I think it's same speed as Hereditary. But that's...
I didn't know that was an option.
That's what I said. Slower, faster, same speed.
Oh, same speed.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's the same speed as Hereditary. I think if you think Hereditary kept your interest, you could think this movie is really... not slow, but if you didn't think Hereditary was fast, then you're screwed.
Yeah, you're not gonna.
With this movie.
You're in for a rough time. All right, so for those who don't know, reeling from the unexpected death of her husband, Beth, Rebecca Hall, is left alone in her lakeside home that he built for her, which is a beautiful home. She tries her best to keep it together, but then the dreams come, and the dreams are wild. This is, which is probably why I kept thinking of The Last Night So. And doesn't she like fall asleep and she wakes up in the 60s or something?
Yeah, the dreams are. She gets pulled through mirrors. Like there's Rose the Hat stuff going on.
There is. And see, Rebecca Ferguson, Rebecca Hall, Rebecca Ferguson. I mean, it's flip a coin, dude. Disturbing visions of a presence in the house call to her, beckoning a ghostly allure. Whoever wrote this synopsis was great. They love these nice words. But the harsh light of day washes away any proof of a haunting. It's one of those "is it really happening" kind of deals. Against the advice of her friends, she she begins to dig into his belongings, yearning for answers.
Yes,
and she starts getting answers to. Think she probably didn't want to discover.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
She was a go-getter in this movie. Sometimes a lot of movies like this where like you have to do like, there's always the parts in horror movies where you're doing the research of the monster, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing the investigation. Like I was thinking of what movie? The Box.
You're thinking of all of them.
Yeah,
every paranormal movie has the
and it's always so boring, and it's they usually go to some library and they get what are those reels they put the newspapers?
The microfiche.
The microfiche. You grab it's usually they slide a couple of them bitches on, and then you see some family was slaughtered and it's real boring. But the character of Beth in this movie, she was so smart and very precise with her investigation. And even one of the notes, I pulled up my notes from we were watching because I haven't done that in a while. I'm just writing them down. But one of the first things I wrote was, "This lady is great. Cool scene to show how she's managing the death." Like she's just a very go-getter and dealing with the death in the beginning of the movie. I thought they did really, really well.
All of it.
I mean, it's just, she's there eating, whatever kind of casserole someone made her, and then immediately going into the next scene where, because she's a teacher, and it's the end of the school year, and a mom comes in, and she's like, my Skylar, it's always a Skylar, I think.
Hunter.
Hunter.
Yep.
Yeah, all interchangeable.
Yep.
Didn't get the good grade, and the way she just dealt with the problem ahead of her while dealing with her husband's death, she was just like, You want a B? Here's a B. And the mom's like, what?
What you're saying is blowing my mind because it's true, right? But keep in mind that all her friends around her are treating like a slow rolling disaster.
Yes.
They're all worried she's completely falling apart. Everyone, Mel, the neighbor, tells her you've been through way more than a human being should endure recently, like whatever. But you're like, she's in charge, she's a go-getter, she's solving problems, she's doing like whatever. She thinks she's a disaster. You think she's awesome. That's part of what's going on here that's amazing in this movie.
Well, everyone's telling Beth in this movie what she should be doing.
Yes.
And that just rubbed me. Everyone's like,
I'm so glad you noticed that because that's my entire theory about this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that's literally my explanation for the ending. You just said out loud.
Oh, interesting. I'm gonna dig that. But the bar scene was actually interesting because a lot of Hereditary was another one that dealt with the grief of someone dying.
Trauma, yep.
And what I liked about how the Night House dealt with it is immediately when all the coworkers go to the bar, she's drinking heavy. She's trying to just dealing with a lot. And the coworkers are all wondering how they're on ice. They're like, how much can we talk about? How much? Because they all want to ask her, the hard questions.
I don't know. They all want to ask her. Claire wants to steer the conversation away from this. The other friends are picking up signals from Beth that she wants to talk about it.
Yes, right? and that's what I liked about it. They're all at first in the beginning of the scene. They're all kind of like, how much can we ask? How much is appropriate?
Totally.
And then Beth eventually just kind of gives them the go ahead, and then they're all like, so your husband's death, what happened? Asking them about the suicide and how she's handling with it, and she's just an open book. She's like not trying to hide it, not trying to bullshit them. She's giving them the facts. To hide it,
but she's trying to confront. Right, so here's one of the amazing things in this scene. I might as well just do it now because it's what's the most common word on Earth, on the planet? The single most common word. Okay.
Close.
The most internationally recognized word, right? So there's no translations for it. It's just okay in every language, right?
Wow.
So there are line readings of okay in cinema, and up to now I had a secret list in my head of what the greatest just saying that one word could be, and up to now the king or queen or ruler of it was Matt Damon saying okay at the end of Departed. So Mark Wahlberg walks in after all this time, all they're trying to escape death, points a gun right at him, and he's just holding the bag of groceries. He looks up, he's like, okay. Until now, that was my favorite okay, right? But in this scene, they ask her as they get closer and closer to trying to cross what lines they see with what can we really ask? Someone asks, did he write a suicide note? And she says, he did. And then she reaches in her purse and pulls it out. And it's got a little blood on it, and it's got her name written on it. And she just places it in the middle of the table of the friends, and they're looking at each other, and it feels like the Peloton commercial that infuriated everybody.
Oh yeah,
right. So they're or the spoof of it when they were what Ryan Reynolds did after, but they're looking at this note, and she wants to tell them what's in the note because it's puzzling, and they want to know what's in the note, but everyone is paralyzed, and she looks around the table. She's put the note out. She's taken the brave step, and they're just looking at her, and they don't say anything, and she goes, okay, and just grabs the note and opens it, and her delivery of it is so I'll be the brave one, I'll do the work, I'm handling the trauma, I'm trying to solve the mystery, I'm doing the detective work. You guys, I gave you the signals that I want to talk about this because I need to figure it out loud. You're having trouble picking up on my signals, right? So now that you finally picked up on the signals, I reveal there's a note that you asked about, and no one's going to ask me what's in it? Okay. And it's the greatest of all time of saying what that is. The performance is magnificent. But you're right. That scene is just so great.
And
the lady next to her you keep it in your purse?
Yeah, it's got that blood on it. Oh my God.
Amazing.
Absolutely
great
not. How scary did you find this movie?
Terrifying.
Interesting.
Terrifying. The thing is, this movie is so mind-boggling to me because in the end of the day, when accepting the religious element, when you're running from Freddy, you're running from Jason, you're running from whatever, they're trying to kill you, and it might be unpleasant and it might take a long time, but eventually you're going to die, and then there's nothing. Right? So they're all sending you to nothing, right? This is the ultimate horror villain who's in this movie, and they do a great job with this horror villain. And when the movie's over, I just feel like the movie won't get credit for how well it's handling taking on the ultimate horror villain. This is the trump card villain. You can't beat this villain. Right?
It's also one of the most badass names, the Nothing. That's just
totally.
Beat that.
Totally. What do you think of the elements of this movie, just real quick? The sound design, the special effects, the shots of the nothing and the door frames and the thing, because the visuals blew my mind. But what do you think of the recipe of this movie,
dude? They for 50,000. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's if you haven't seen this movie, or you have, just try to imagine like $50,000
right,
accomplishing what these cats did. The sound design was amazing.
Yes.
The cinematography. Anytime you do like those like optical illusion type things of like you know the nothing in the movie, I can only describe him, this doesn't make sense, as like a monster you'd see in Disney's Fantasia. Like, it just feels like this weird whimsical thing that materializes when you least expect it, with the least expecting things. Like
it's so weird.
Like the first time you see him, you know, the door, or it,
yes,
rather, is when the door shuts behind her, and it's just like this like reflection in the glass, and you just see this like black little outline with like a speck of white light in its eye, and it's one of those Hereditary-esque things where it's in the background, and it takes you a second to be like, what the hell is that? And by the time you recognize it's that, the nothing like vanishes. And it's that's why I think it kind of reminds me of Fantasia almost a little bit. Like, there's something whimsical about the nothing and the ways in which it materializes.
That's so weird. That's so weird to me, because it's so terrifying, because it's just an existential blank that's getting wider and wider through the movie. It's really small, then the frames get wider, the creaking gets louder, and then when it finally comes for her, the whole house moves and shakes, and it just kind of roars.
It's like a Doctor Strange kind of
thing.
Yeah,
it was awful. It just gave me the worst, like, sick feeling. But whimsical wasn't one of them. That's the thing, is I think
not whimsical in like
but it is. That's what I'm saying, is it's kind of a prankster. That's what I'm telling you, is there's two things going on here, and it's fascinating that you're watching the one and I'm watching the other. And let's go to the end, and because I think it's going to get us back to what the movie is. Okay. So if we go forward to the end, which the only podcast I listened to about this, which is one that I really respect, they liked the movie and didn't like the ending. They thought the last 3 minutes of the movie really fell apart. They thought it was kind of weak sauce, a little confusing, basically. Right. Essentially, right? I couldn't disagree more. I just think it's like such a perfect execution of what was going on. But you got to think about what's going on is Death fell in love with her, and the ending is the breakup, right? So that's why he keeps saying, come back to me. That's why he says, almost like hurt to her, the nothing, the villain, says to her almost hurt, like, you left me, right? He got her on the other side, and then for 4 minutes he had her, and he sort of fell in love with her, right? Which is why you get this creepy romantic vibe going on throughout the whole movie, really, right? Because she's seeking it out. She's not running from this thing. She's going everywhere she can.
Telling him to, like, hey, you know, right? If you're here, give me a sign. Or something like that,
come out and see, come out and confront me. She goes straight to the other demon house, like a couple times, right? By herself, drunk, like no fear, right? Because this thing can't hurt her. It never could. It never had a chance to hurt her. She was invulnerable to it. That's why it was trying to use her husband, right? All it could do was convince her to kill herself. It could hurt her through her, but it couldn't hurt her physically. It could hurt through other people or turn her on herself, but it couldn't do it to her. That's why you're safe now, because it's just you. Now think about, the men can't help, which is why in the last shot you see her. Remember, the poster is a hug. The nothing and her hugging, right? The last shot of this movie is Claire and her hugging. You see half of one of them, half of the other of them, while they hug it out really closely. Then she looks, there's the nothing trail kind of like coming through our door right now, and also coming off of the boat, right, towards the night house. And Mel is off to the side. He's like, what happened? He was there too late. He ran down the stairs too slow. He didn't jump in the water. He didn't make a sound. He didn't give good advice. He didn't help, because she has to break up with the men, right? But here's the amazing thing. The way her performance, I cannot convey to you how exquisite this is to watch, the way she did this in her performance at the end, right? Because the solve for this, to beat this demon, the nothing demon, it's sitting in the boat. And one of the saddest things I think I've heard in a modern horror movie is when she says, when she asks, "Is Owen? Where's Owen?" because now it's just the demon in the boat with her. This is the final confrontation, right? And he says, he's gone. But you knew that. So there's no afterlife. He's not guiding her. The ghost, there's no ghost of him trying to like caress her and give her tips. She has no guardian angel. She has no like whatever. He's gone. He screwed up and he's gone. He's gone. He's into nothing. The men aren't going to help. You're not going to hurt her. It's not going to come through Owen. Nothing useful is going to come through the male side, right? So she's sitting in a boat, one female, one man, right? They're sitting across from each other, and if they combine, she's gonna kill. She's gonna be part of nothing, which is death, right? So he's trying to convince her to shoot herself. She's slowly turning the gun, and then it happens. The thing that you said that happened the whole movie. Everyone telling her what to do. Mel telling her to stay off the path. Her friend telling her not to drink. Her friend telling her not to go back to the house. And what does she do every single time? Okay, because she's good at that. Okay, and keeps going. Okay, and just ignores them. Right? She's just charging in. So what she does is, at the end, she literally is like kind of combined with the Claire or whatever. I'm sorry, before with the suicide part, she's turning the gun on her. And what she does is the demon goes, come back to me. And she gets the tiniest little smile because that's where he fucked up. She's not going to do what anyone tells her to do, including him. Right? So as soon as he goes, come back to me, he's sitting there. She just smiles and she's like, no, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. I'm not going to do what anyone tells me to do. I'm going to do the opposite of what you all tell me to do. And you just told me to shoot myself, so I'm not. So she puts the gun down. She's in this like weird, fugue mental plane state. And she solves the problem on her own, by her own strength, with her own lessons, not her husband, not her husband's guardian angel, not her friend.
Not the guy working at the bookstore.
Right. Her friend is the only one who can help. It was the only one who could help the whole time because she's practically helping in the world. She was sitting in the boat. Now think about it. If you were watching that movie closely at the end, when she pulls her out of that boat, she thinks she's saving her, but she's not. She's just waking her up with some water, right? Because she already put the gun down. She had already won. Yeah, it was already over, right? So her friend's not saving her. She saved herself because that was the only worthy thing that could have happened for this character. Is how good this character is. So that's the thing is, I just think she broke up with death at the end. I think he told her, reunite with me, come back to me. And she said, nope, I'm not coming back to you. I'm not coming back to Owen. I'm not coming back to anyone. I'm going to let Claire hug it out with me. Right. And then when Mel looks up and says at the boat, he goes, what do you see? There's nothing there. And she's like, I know. Right. Which is the final thing, which is, by the way, the Greek mythology, whole Shakespeare thing. Like there's this great Greek story where the Cyclops gets attacked by, I think, Ulysses or Odysseus, however you want to say it. And when he attacks, he stabs the Cyclops' one eye out. It sucks to have one eye. Yeah, someone comes at his bike. And the Cyclops is like, what's your name? And he says, my name's nobody. So the Cyclops is running around to all his Cyclops friends. And they're like, what happened? He's like, nobody attacked me. And they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? He's like, who poked your eye out? You're bleeding. He's like, nobody. They're like, nobody poked you in the eye? So it's that joke. It's every time this movie is like, nothing's after you. Yeah, nothing is after you, right? Like that's but it's a reference to that kind of Greek kind of like thing. So anyway, I think this movie is her figuring out how not to be combined with anything that's not her and to just go on. And that's why you get the Shakespeare to be or not to be soliloquy. I love the scene in the bar when her Claire is trying to divert from the suicide note part, and she's like, quote Shakespeare, and she turns to her, she's like, are you trying to cheer me up with Shakespeare's suicide soliloquy? And her friend's like, oh shit, you're smart. That's funny.
It makes a lot of sense why you like this movie. It's got bookstores, it's got Shakespeare.
Totally. But to be or not to be, that is the question. What does that mean? To be or to be nothing?
Right.
Right, that's this movie. Right, that's what I'm saying. Is she was deciding this whole time whether to be or to be nothing, and she decided to be, and that's the plot of this movie.
Man, so that makes me like the movie quite a bit more.
Right,
that explanation.
But just one thing, real quick. So this nothing is it. The thing is, it has no power on her, but it had all kinds of power over her husband.
Well,
and this movie gets really dark with what her husband does, and I think with what they had her husband do is the biggest problem this movie has. And now that we kind of talked through what I think the movie is. I'm curious when you think back on like whatever the fact that her husband's basically a serial killer and some of the other things where you see nothing manifest or whatever. Does it seem different
100%.
Under that theory?
It feels 100% different. One, I agree with what you said. Like that to me feels like the best explanation for everything that the movie's about. Like,
and doesn't turn her into a crappy character who married an idiot. Because the other theory is that her husband is. What's the other theory? The one we just watched.
Well, the only thing that they were trying to explain from what we watched was that the husband was trying to throw off the nothing through building a house that mirrored it, and based off the text that he had read, that he could do certain things to survive, have Beth survive. One of them being building the house that mirrors it to confuse it, but also bringing in
a
women,
reverse floor plan house.
Floor plan house
to trick the demon into
yeah, and they had like a talisman in there that also kept,
which was creepy,
which looked really great, kind of like Blair Witch-y almost. But then also giving Death women who looked like Beth, Death Beth,
right,
that's
totally
easy to remember. That looked like her to try to like please him. It's almost kind of like if Death and Final Destination had no game. Yeah. Like that's kind of like what this movie is.
I love that log line. I love that log line for this movie.
That's kind of what it is. I don't really have another theory or like anything that I read. And most of it, there wasn't really theories like that. They were, a lot of people were just trying to break down like what they saw in front of them. They didn't really have any like bigger explanation like you did.
See, now in my explanations, my feeling is basically accepted the Reddit explanation of this movie. If I could sum it up, is that it's kind of what I'm saying, that the nothing's a demon that kind of got attached to her when she died for 4 minutes back in a car crash when she was young, and now, like you said, the difference to me is, in my theory, Owen could actually be a completely crazy serial killer who was in love with her, but also just lost control and was a serial killer, right? And was possessed, obviously, like whatever, but completely compromised. But in the other theory, he's really just in love with her. He's a great guy. He's trying to protect her, and the demon makes him do awful things.
Right.
And I just don't think that works because, like we discussed, he has the worst plan in the history of all horror movies. Right? Like, his plan is to sacrifice look-alike women of his wife to a demon periodically when he can't trick it with his house. And then when giving it 8 or 10 women that look the same doesn't solve anything, he decides then to kill himself, which also doesn't work. Right? So he unnecessarily kills maybe a dozen scores of women,
that's the one,
and then himself, all for nothing, because she's still stalked by the nothing thing the whole time, right? So that never sat right with me.
That never sat right with me either. The fact that this entity is always after her, like it'd be like you come up to be like, Nick, I think there's a hitman coming after me. Like, hey, I have a great idea. Let me jump off this building. That'll solve it. Right. And you're like, I'm worse off now than I was before giving you that information. Right. So that part and I haven't really seen any people talk about like any theories as to like maybe the nothing convinced him to do this to get after her, like which would kind of make sense. Totally. But for what this movie gave us, that he did this as a way to protect her.
I think the nothing totally exists. I just think that it's absolutely fine that it possessed him and used him in awful ways and etc. And it did compromise him. Like it did. He can be a good guy trying to struggle against on the one side and just be this awful like whatever. But there was too much involved to just be able to write him a pass. There's just no way to write him a pass. He's stalking people. He's taking hundreds of pictures of them. Then there's scenes where he's like making out with them. I mean, you could just kill them. Right?
That's the
right. Like so that part, like the thing is, I didn't need it for my theory, so I didn't worry about that part because he could just be an awful person. It doesn't matter, right? Because the point to her was, the point of the movie is her character, not him. There was way too much focus on what he was doing and whether he was trying to save it. I just think he's a totally incidental character, basically. So that part is like a thing. Is Mel in on it? probably not.
No, and in the beginning of the movie, they sort of set it up to where maybe he is, maybe he isn't. And there is a scene when Beth asks him about like the house.
Yes.
And he knew about the house. And so when you get that information watching the film, you're like, okay, maybe he knows more than he does, but it turns out he just kind of just wanted to walk in the woods with his dog.
Totally. But see, here's the mind-blowing part to me is let me throw a question at you.
Okay.
There are scenes in this movie where you see the full-on mirror house.
Yes.
With women in different rooms and awful things happening in the different rooms.
Right.
When we go to the actual night house, it's a shitty half-built shack in the woods.
Yes.
So what are we seeing when we see the good version that she's in with the Christmas scene and that stuff? Like, where are we?
That I don't know.
Right. That's the problem but what I think is happening is that all of this is about who are you, like so there's a gap between the two houses, right? There's the reverse house and this house. That's why you keep seeing the nothing between two things, a pillar here and a pillar there, or the boat here and the shore there. It's always between two things, right? It needs a bracket. Mm-hmm. You need a frame to see nothing.
Right.
Right? So like the demon house is what the demon sees. He built it with the idol in it, so all he needed was a basic sketch of the floor plan. So like, you know how the demon's making Beth hallucinate? Mm-hmm. Owen's making the demon hallucinate.
Gotcha.
Owen built something that looks that way to the demon, or that's how the demon's seeing it. He just needed to build it up for the demon to be able to see that kind of stuff, right? So the demons, that's what the demon's seeing. The demon's seeing all this place where it's stashed, all these women that had been brought to it and didn't satisfy it, and he didn't get his true victim back, Beth. He's being tricked, like King Kong gets tricked when they try to like give him the wrong. They put a fake actress, in New York when they have King Kong trapped, and they roll someone out who's not the actual person. That it's not Fay Wray or Naomi Watts or whatever version you want to talk about, and he just roars. He's like, who's this idiot?
who we got here?
Right? So the demon's mad, but meanwhile, think about what's happening. You're seeing this glorious, beautiful house with all these murder scenes in different rooms. Mm-hmm. And what is actually there is just a really crappy house with a whole bunch of horribly mutilated bodies
under the floor,
in the cellar or under the ground or whatever, right? So it's only glorious from what the demon is seeing, right? And if you think about it like that, then it makes sense that Beth is getting the movie wants you to think she gets pulled through the mirror to the demon side. That's where she is when you see the two moons, and she's like kind of levitating, but she's really just in the boat, right? Mm-hmm. That's the part where it all collapses in, and it's in her head, but also not in her head at the same time. That's what I'm trying to tell you is the movie made it so that you had a character who was going to make all these decisions we hate when characters making horror movies. It was going to go straight to the haunted place. It was going to go straight to the demon place. She was going to go straight to the cellar of the dead bodies. She wasn't going to bring a weapon. She was going to bring a bottle of brandy, right? And, which you don't recommend when you're demon hunting, is going drunk and unarmed, right? And if you were watching a normal horror movie where someone was going drunk and unarmed to the killing zone, you'd be like, what are you doing? But everyone told her not to do it. So she went. Right? And the demon tells her, come back to me. And she doesn't. She's learned how to just be on her own.
That was one of the notes I wrote down that I liked from the nothing. It was there's only me. That line that was a pretty chilling line. There's only me. Just let go. Again, it's always this movie could be called terrible direction.
Well, and also remember I think the best like chilling line in the movie, and they set it up so well, is when she thinks it's her dead husband and they're sort of making out. We're getting like a little ghosty sex is about to happen, and then she loses the feeling for a second, and she goes, Owen, and he goes, no. I'm not Owen. And it's like the reveal in The Visit, when it's like the grandparents aren't the grandparents.
Yes,
it hit like that to me. Like it wasn't that it was that
because
big
that
a
tells
twist.
you that everything has never been Owen.
Right, but think about what she does immediately after that. She like smooths her dress down. I mean, she was literally about to make out with a demon.
Yeah,
right?
They were getting real handsy.
And the thing is, I think the most crucially interesting scene in the whole thing is that little Christmas display when she walks in and sees the demon version of Owen. I don't know if you noticed, but in the fireplace, the flames were running backwards. So it was
I did not realize that.
Super creepy look because it was just a Christmas scene with a little Christmas music and a log. And he was sitting on a couch petting her hair, and she was like asleep on in his lap. But she was also standing over him, looking down on him like Christmas Carol, like show your future style.
Right.
And then you look across and the flames are going backwards, and it's very not right. So then she's talking to him back and forth, and that's when he reveals to her, like, I had you. You were with me, and then you left me. And now I tried to convince your husband to send you back to me, and he keeps sending imposters. But I was like, you got to send the real one back to me. And he killed himself to protect you, but it's to no avail because now I'm just going to use your depression to convince you to kill yourself. And that's what the rest of the movie plays out as.
How come the husband was never like, hey, honey, real quick, got a letter in the mail from something called the Nothing, says it wants you back. What's that about?
Well, that's the thing is, that's what I'm trying to say is I think Owen was more complicit in his possession than than we realize. I think he was easier to corrupt and bring down than we realized just because he was a guy. Right? Like it was not this movie, it was the women that were going to solve it. It was always going to be it was never going to be like Mel is the most useless character. He tells her one semi-useful factoid, gets in her way most of the time, and invites her to a lunch he never makes. And then shows up too late at the end to just like shrug.
He like sees her in a boat with a gun. He's like, wow, mine's made up.
Right? What other men are in this movie? The guy at the teacher who asks the dumbest questions and sets her off. There's Mel.
The guy at the bookstore who doesn't answer anything.
Right.
She's like, what's this book about? He's like, what's a book? How do you read?
Exactly.
I don't know my ABCs.
This is what I'm trying to say. But can we just real quick, I don't want this to go too long, but I gotta, how exquisite was the scene where she confronts the girlfriend? Like, she stalked her like a monster. Like, she was stalking her in the shelves like she was the killer. And when she confronts her, it is the coldest takedown.
Her emotions are like bricked in. Like, she made up her mind.
Such a great way to say
it. The frequencies aren't going out of bounds. Like, she is locked in. It's almost kind of like I felt like in that scene, David Attenborough could have started narrating. He's like, and now we have Beth quartering
Predator and Prey.
Yeah, exactly. She's at that point in the movie, her character's like, she kind of has, I don't want to say it's like a downward spiral. It's like a parallel spiral. You know what I mean? Like, it's like she's not going down, but she's.
Well, my theory is she's rising, but you're right. She's getting wrecked at the same time.
Yeah, that's actually, I think you're right. She's like spiraling upwards.
She's taking
almost
hits every scene,
but she's relentless about it. She doesn't let it phase her. Nope. Like, some movies, they realize something, they get it real taken aback, and it's like, what are they going to do next? She just keeps taking information and charging forward, and there's just this brute force that you can't fuck with her. Which I really thought was awesome. But in that scene,
there's this amazing moment when she asks the girl to take down her hair.
Yes.
She wants to see that she how much of a lookalike she is to her. And the girl is just this employee at a bookstore. She's like, and up to now it's been normal. Then not normal, but she's been going along with it. And then Beth's like, take down your hair. And she's like, why? And then Beth's like, because you slept with my dead husband and I asked you nicely. And she just takes her hair down. She just she might as well cast a hair down spell on her. She's just like her hair tumbles down.
What I really liked about that,
and then she comes back to talk to her with the drinking scene at the house, which is their interactions are great.
And she's like, let me get you something to drink. She's like, here's 8 liters of brandy, and you're like, okay. First of all, just a little on some ice.
Well, and remember in her thing of never doing what people tell her to do earlier, Claire's there, and Claire is like, she goes to Claire, do you want a brandy? And Claire's like, no, and I don't want you to have one either. And she's like, okay. Yeah. And then in comes a bottle of brandy.
And she's like, it's an acquired taste, and I don't even like it.
Amazing.
But with that scene with the bookstore lady, what I really liked about that, and this is where I thought the movie got scary. There was a jump scene where Beth falls asleep, and like a second later, she like wakes up to a haunt, which
great transition,
which got me. Yeah, great transition, and it was really scary. It is a jump scare, but it didn't feel cheap. I actually
no, because it wasn't just one jump scare on the other end of it. You didn't know what was happening. You were as disoriented as her.
Yeah, there was a cool disorienting.
Usually a jump scare, you just see the face, or you see the thing, or you see this one was like jump scare, but what the fuck?
Exactly. But where the movie, I thought, started to get scary, it was in the implications of what could have happened. And by that time in the film, when you're starting to piece together like what the husband was doing and all the motions that she was like, she said, you know, she went over to their house. They had a couple drinks. He took her to this place. You know, they fooled around a little bit, and knowing that lady has no idea that she was about to be murdered for nothing.
Right, for nothing, by nothing.
For nothing, by nothing.
Right, exactly. And murdered in a horrible way, because he's gonna like
he hogtied him.
Idol. Yeah. Well, some of them get killed other ways, but like. That it looked like that was how she was going, and that looked very painful. But no, it didn't look good at all. But it's kind of amazing because Owen had this charming, like, softer side to him, and there's this amazing little moment where she's telling her, and she gets in where she's telling Beth about what her interactions with Beth's husband were. And she gets a little into the story, so she forgets a little bit where she is, and they've both been drinking a little. And she goes, so we just, I went to the house across the lake, and that Beth hadn't even existed, but this casual person was going to have parties at, right? She's like, I went to the house across the lake, and he just held me. I felt safe with him, and she's like, I know. And she's like, oh yeah.
of course, you know.
Your husband, right?
He put a ring on.
But it's a great moment because it's a sign of that he wasn't just like this evil. He was like a guy that Mel liked him. Everyone liked him. Right?
Yeah. No, I really dug the hell out of this movie, and even the big like ghost reveal at the end that they used for the poster, where like they're hugging and like actually like physically touching. Super well done. Like the effects didn't look cheesy at all. Like she holds her hand up, and it's just like the slightest little effect. She holds her hand up, and you just see like the skin on her fingertips flatten out, and it's just like this little detail that, like, it doesn't look obvious. It doesn't look like something like from the only other movie I could really compare it to, which should be the most recent Invisible Man, but for some reason I keep going back to Hollow Man.
Right.
It doesn't feel like that.
Right.
And she really genuinely feels like she's interacting with the ghost, and the camera work in this movie does a lot of interesting things. One, the way it frames the nothing throughout the movie, especially like when it shows like the head, and the head gets bigger and like comes at her.
So good.
That's like the Fantasia stuff I was thinking about. But at that scene when they finally have their interaction, it's a cut of Beth, like a medium shot of her head, and then the camera like pans up and stops head level of where the nothing's head would be. Like they legitimately framed it as if that person was there.
Totally.
And it just like you just feel it. Like and it's just the other side of her bathroom.
And what's really amazing is that they somehow never betray the real world explanation. So like there are cases where if you really mentally commit and believe like your dead lover is there or whatever, you could make your skin ripple, right? Just you could make muscles contract. I mean, people do weird contortions and stuff, right? So, but you never see them. You just see this rippling skin. But theoretically, if she's crazy enough, she could be doing that to herself, right? And then the next thing is she gets pulled through the mirror, but all we see is her head smash into a mirror, and then she's like seeing the room really weird. But that could be a concussion,
exactly,
right? They do all the demon mayhem, but also keep the real world balance just right. It's so good.
No, I really like the way they handled the nothing. I like how they started the slow explanation of what the nothing was, and it's so weird, man. Like for people who haven't watched it, it just feels like, you know how like Dracula is a romance. This is kind of like a death romance.
It is. It felt like the things that were happening at the end with Winona Ryder's character
Yeah.
and Gary Oldman's character at the end of the Coppola Dracula. If it shouldn't be happening and she shouldn't be attracted to him, and the way Dracula looks at the end of the movie, no one should be attracted to him.
Zero.
Right, but she is somehow, right? So like that's there's something happening here.
Well,
too.
the nothing gets bonus points because he can be a sexy banister. He can be a handsome bookshelf. You know,
he totally could. He can solve all your boyfriend IKEA problems. No sweat.
Oh, dude, you could he could build you a shelf.
Yeah, totally.
30 seconds.
He can build your house backwards for you. As a matter of fact.
You know what? That's funny. It's funny you say that because I was thinking for a review.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking how great would it be if we had a short review, you know, just one or two sentences. First sentence, straightforward. Second sentence, write it completely backwards. Yeah, just write it
I'm all
completely backwards.
I'm all for it. I loved every reverse shot in this movie, especially like the reverse number sign, address sign on the house. All that looks so good.
So I actually, it's funny I brought this up because there's something about whenever I watch a movie that I really enjoy and I find out it has a low budget. It just makes me appreciate it even more. I don't know why. There's just something inherently cool about getting a group of creative people together for a relatively low budget and coming up with something this masterfully crafted. Now, let me ask you this. $50,000.
Yes.
You can have the following. Okay. You can either have the Night House, or would you rather have an Audi A5 Sportsback Premium Plus for $45,000? What you pick?
The Night House.
All right.
100%.
What about a 2021 Alfa Romeo?
Night House.
All
Not
right.
even tempted.
What about a Kia? Who would want a Kia Stinger? What's that? Apparently it's going for 46K.
What's a Stinger missile run?
Oh, let me look that up. That's got to be millions of dollars. Stinger missile.
I'll probably take one of those. I'll sell that on eBay to the Ukraine.
Well, let's see. Stinger missile cost. This is a real thing. Oh. No, George, you can have a Stinger missile for
Cool.
40,000, 38. Is that right?
You're sweet.
38,000 to in the year 1980 before that. So today that's no, you can't. No, that's
I don't want that.
No, right now a Stinger missile nowadays would cost you what a one night of the living dead.
One night of the living dead. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Or 12 this movie, Night House.
Or you could have about 100 paranormal activities. So
Totally.
the Stinger missiles where things get a little interesting.
Well, huge caveats here because I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I know you really like the movie. I still need
to let it sit for a minute. Like you enjoyed it, and not to cut you off, but you enjoyed it overnight. Like this movie was the overnight oats for you. It grew on me, but I know that in the coming weeks, it's gonna grow on me even more. And I would love to see what this team does next.
I would too, but that's the thing is though, I can imagine watching this in a totally different way, where you think to yourself. As a matter of fact, we watched this, and Bill was like, nothing happened. Nothing.
I love the nothing.
Well, they happened. I mean, basically, it was a real world thing where it was just a crazy person, right? So I could see watching this movie and like repulsion interpreting it, right, and then not feeling that good about it. I think the problem with this movie is the easiest way to read the plot turns the characters to hot garbage. So you have to read the plot the hard way, and then you have glorious characters.
Right.
Right? But if you read it the easy way, you just have characters who have terrible plans, terrible taste in lovers.
If you look at it through that, this movie's title is World's Worst Boyfriend. He's like, Matt, I mean, she's like, hey, honey, we need to get something done. He's like, great, I'm going to murder 15 women and myself, and good luck. Like, and
I won't be back tomorrow.
That doesn't help me at all.
Also, I built you a shitty 3-room.
I've seen kids build forts better than that.
Well, I had a tree house across the way.
The other thing was, you know, it wasn't like
terrible.
A small little house that he built.
No, it took a lot of work.
Yeah. How did no one hear like the power tools?
Yeah, that's
I mean, not to get.
That's
into
why I
the
thought
little
Mel
thing.
might have been in on it because that didn't make any sense.
Because you get a power, you get a buzzsaw out on the right across the lake. Everyone's gonna fucking hear.
Yeah,
that.
they had one gunshot at the beginning, and they talked about it for like 1/3 of the movie because it echoed around, and everyone heard it.
Yeah, birds flew away.
But meanwhile, maybe he learned he got a velvet hammer. I don't know what.
She was a pretty good teacher though. The one mother came in and was like, my son needs a B.
That was great.
She just gave it to him. I think my math teacher did that for me.
Good.
He said have Nick meet me halfway, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'll take the C, my dude. Mr. Cups, thank you so much.
Just give it to me, Mr. Cups. I'm glad Mr. Cups isn't haunted, presumably.
As far as I know, he's still alive.
Right, but he was never possessed.
I don't know that.
Demonic cups aren't good, man.
Like, I don't know. I worked at a Sears one time, and he came in, and I was like,
"You
still doing stuff?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then his head spun, and I was like, "I think."
God damn it! I do this.
I think he might. I think he might be.
This guy was terrible trouble.
Oh, Jesus!
So let us know what you think of the Night House. If you weren't like us and you saw it and didn't miss it and you remember anything from it.
It was again. There are so many. Like movies and TV shows coming out that this was one that I was certainly familiar with, like the poster and like the imagery and the colors of it. So like I knew what it was, but there's just so much shit nowadays that just flies by it, and I'm glad we took time to watch this. I mixed
it up with The Empty Man, and then I was avoiding it because I thought it was too long. But that's The Empty Man.
Yeah, the Empty. How long?
The Empty Man's like 220.
Oh yeah, no.
Right. So then I thought this would be 220, and then when we found out the Night House wasn't the Empty Man and it was much shorter, I was like, hell yeah, let's.
Oh yeah, we were instantly there. So if you like this episode and you like the Night House, give us a 5-star review on the old iTunes. Just review, give us nothing. Just 5 stars, nothing. Oh, don't make me do that. The only time people have ever say to do something backwards is when I watched. You remember the movie Jingle All the Way with Arnold? And he gets pulled over. I think we watched.
Yes,
I
do.
And then the officer pulls him over. He's like, "Say your alphabet," and then he gets the Z, and he goes, "But now do it backwards." That always.
That's yeah.
I think about that at least 3 or 4 times a year, and I'm like, "Can I do my ABCs backwards?" No, so I definitely can't do nothing.
You're like, big no thanks.
Yeah, I know. So that's a weird fear of mine.
We'll be impressed if you do it.
Okay, so comment nothing backwards. I believe in you. 5 stars. Until next time. Stay scary. Watch a bunch of horror movies. Don't do nothing. Full circle. See you next time.
Bye.